Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
And hello there.
So we are talking Vedic Astrology Plus. Let's call this a Vedic Astrology Plus because there's just so much to talk about when it comes to the planet Venus.
Well, there is, and there's so many different aspects to look at and, well, things to talk about. I really love Venus. Venus is probably one of my absolute favorite planets.
Yeah, Venus is wild. For one, it's the twin of the Earth, right? Size-wise, they're almost identical. And if I remember right, the Earth is 93 million miles from the Sun, and Venus is 67 million, I want to say, something like that. I might be off a little. But, it's the second planet in, and then, of course, Mercury is the first in. And Venus, I think there's a lot... Oh, there's just so much to it from a occult, and I'm making the parentheses with my fingers, like an occult or a hidden aspect.
Right. A lot of people will look at Venus, and Venus has been named the planet of demons. I think that's pretty sad, but that's what it's dubbed here in the West.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason for it, because again, if we go biblical, who rules this world? Well, Satan, the adversary to humankind. So I think there's a lot of misinformation that's given.
There really is, or they paint it in such a way that's not how it truly is. And that's a huge way how they control us.
So yeah, Venus's diameter is 7,600 miles, while the Earth's diameter is 7,900. So they're so close, so close. The year for Venus is 225 days. Now, one of the things I find fascinating, and I was just looking at some pictures, that's what I remember getting as the picture of Venus all the time. But the first picture I pulled up now was that. And that's very different than this. This looks hot, harsh, inhospitable. Brutal, right? I mean, it looks fiery. It looks, oh gosh, brimstone, This looks soft. Mm-hmm. So what's the real deal with Venus, And there's so many different aspects to it. And we'll go over the Vedic first. So talking about the significance of Venus in regards to somebody's chart, okay. What is Venus all about?
Well, Venus is about love. Venus is about passion. Venus is compassion. Venus is conveniences. Venus is about design. Venus is so many different things in a person's chart, and depending on where she's at, kind of depends on how she's going to reflect her vibrations toward you.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Venus, I think a lot of us would think right off the bat, Venus perhaps with love. Would we not think?
Yes, very much so. I guess I just think that's such a given to me. I didn't even mention it, but of course it's very much about love. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So it's interesting in the mythology of it. So Venus, if we go into Vedic mythology, is considered as the goddess of love, marriage, beauty, and comforts. And it's actually a form of Mahalakshmi, which we've done a video on Lakshmi, which is also, again, a bringer of abundance, material and otherwise, emotional as well.
Yeah, she's very beautiful. She does like very nice things, but she also likes to be comfortable. She likes to, and spread that comfort to other people too.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And Mahalakshmi is the wife of Lord Vishnu. Vishnu is the preserving force and of the universe from a Vedic point of view. Also, Vishnu has had incarnations as Rama and Krishna, which Krishna, there's definitely a correlation between that and the Christ consciousness, as we have spoken about as well.
Well, it's been just really nice having you and working on the Vedic charts so that I can put the whole story together, because even with Vedic astrology, you're still only getting half the story.
Now, Vedic astrology and the Western astrology is different in many ways. According to the Western astrology, Venus is also known as well, in legends, Lucifer, right? The morning star. It's either the morning star or the evening star, depending on time of year and everything in position. Interesting, because Lucifer is what? It's the light bringer.
Right, it is the light bringer, and oh, how they can twist things.
So when you would see Venus in the position where it's the rising star in the morning, it's going to have a dominant brilliance to it. It's going to be giving off more light than others because it's so close to us. And again, then after you see that, then the sun will start to rise, the light bringer, from that point of view.
Right. And, even in someone's chart, say if Venus is in their first house, it's going to make them all of these things. It's going to make them really enjoy love and really enjoy comfort and just kind of enjoy all the nice things about life. They're actually very beautiful people. They care about what they wear. They care about how they look. They care about how they present themselves. All of these things.
Yeah, it's a very, very significant planet and influence on our lives. It is fascinating how Venus became Lucifer and everything gets distorted. And there are those that are knowledgeable and will say, well, Lucifer's not really evil, because again, it's the light bringer. And there's so many things that get twisted and so many ways of looking at things. And even, when we get into the symbols and all, when we look at, Lakshmi, Shri Yantra, again, it's talking about the actual fabric of this matrix, this construct of mind that we live in as well.
It does, right? There's just so many different aspects on this whole thing, and I would really love to see a simplified teaching.
But in many ways, Venus is goddess energy.
Yes, she is, for sure.
Divine feminine.
Very divine feminine, and a very good, wonderful, compassionate energy.
Interesting, because when we go into, say, the law of one, the being that's being channeled there, Ra, is a collective. It's a collective. Of course, we know of Ra as the sun god from Egyptian mythology, and they go on to say that they were giving teachings before at different times earlier, and then the teachings got distorted and twisted. But interestingly enough, this collective is from Venus. Did you remember that?
I didn't know that, or I didn't remember it.
Yeah, so they ascended out of our reality. Basically, they've ascended past 3D, and they're a collective that, if I remember right, I believe it was on the 6th density. But they had the 3D experience on Venus and ascended upwards from there. So, they are very, very benevolent. Everybody that's studied the law of one, for the most part, I think, comes away feeling this is a benevolent energy with some really good teachings. And yes, they initially evolved on Venus and ascended on upwards, and, now are trying to help us as well.
Right, it makes sense to me because Earth and Venus are so close, and as far as the size and the days and all of these things, they're so close together.
So it's interesting because the planet Venus has ascended already, and the Earth is in the ascension process right now. It's already ascended according to the law of one, through 4th, 5th density. So they're ahead of us, so to speak. And then there's the whole line of thinking that perhaps Venus and maybe even the Earth weren't initially in the positions that they're in, and perhaps they were both planets that were around Saturn. And there's that Satan connection, which is interesting as well, but we'll save that for another show. So getting back to Venus, to me, I think of the divine feminine and all those energies associated with it.
Oh, I do too. And, there's also a very reassuring energy, a very caring energy that comes with Venus to me too.
So, by the way, the word Lucifer, it means light bringer, and it's from the Latin lux, light. and fere, I guess, fere, to bear or to bring. The word Lucifer is found only in one place, Isaiah 14:12, but only in the King James and related versions. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? In other translations we find, O shining star of the dawn, or O morning star, son of the dawn. The King James Version was based on the Vulgate, the Latin translation of Jerome. Jerome translated the Hebrew Hallel, bright or brilliant one, as Lucifer, which was a reasonable Latin equivalent. And yet it is this Lucifer, the bright one or the light bearer, that became to be understood by so many as the name for Satan, Lord of Darkness. So obviously this is a twisting, and I feel this is completely deliberate by the powers that be, giving us horrible translations and taking something that's benevolent and beautiful and making it just appear to be just the opposite.
And that's what they do. And I think when we recognize that, we slow down and look at our teachings throughout our life and recognize how they do twist everything. It does kind of help somebody get a grasp on, okay, well, what do I question? Well, question everything you've been taught and told by this system.
Absolutely. As we've said many times, do you believe everything from CNN or MSNBC or ABC, CBS, NBC, if anybody even watches those things anymore? Well, then why would you believe the official version? And yet people will hold up the King James Version, and we've talked about King James. He was no saint. No, far from it. And in fact, he was the head of the Masonic orders. He's the, the insider's insider, so to speak. So, yeah, I just think it doesn't make any sense.
No, it really, really doesn't. Not unless you stand back and start to question things.
So could you give just a quick recap about some of the aspects again of Venus real quick, just to recap from an astrological point of view?
In an astrological point of view, the happy signs when Venus is sitting with Libra, Taurus, or Pisces, Venus is very, very happy. And sad signs sitting with Scorpio and Virgo, that would give not so perfect energies if that were sitting in your chart. And then the happiest houses are the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, and 12th. So you can see Venus pretty much gets along with almost everybody, and only sad signs are 3rd, 6th, 8th, and 10th. So these are things that I look at the chart, and I also look at the degrees in Venus, and also who is she looking at? Who is she aspecting? Is she with any planets that she doesn't really like? And all of this kind of folds in and determines the translation that comes to be in your chart. And she's friends with Saturn, Mercury, Ketu, and the moon. And she doesn't necessarily like to sit with, I don't like to call it enemies, but in astrology they call it enemies. Rahu, Sun, Mars, and Jupiter. She's not real comfortable with those planets.
Mm-hmm. So when you get these conjunctions or these trines, as we've seen in so many people's charts, they can really complicate things. It really depends on who's with who. And so like when we start to do a chart and you start in the Vedic sense looking at the first house, and when you're looking at the ascendant and then getting into more detail with the nakshatra, which is the rising star at the time that you're born, something might be indicated there towards one particular tendency, but then as the chart develops and you see, oh, but this is here and this is counteracting that, and this is over there and this is also inhibiting this. So that's why you have to really look at the whole and get a much clearer picture.
That really does help. And then, going into the time, because the time, planets change every 5 to 10 minutes. So, and based on just a couple of degrees, it can change a whole chart. So really, without the time, it's very difficult. I personally can't do it, won't do it, because it would take 20 years of practice to be able to do fix the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important to know, exact time, location, date of birth. So, guys, I hope you found this interesting. There's so much more we could go into in Venus from a mythology standpoint as well. But I always find it's fascinating, and especially seeing the contradictions in the systems that arise, or apparent contradictions. So make sure you are subscribed. Thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Anybody that needs to reach us, set up a appointment for a chart. It's about 2 to 3 weeks right now. She's inundated in charts, but she's plowing through them, and it does take about two hours or so, give or take, a chart. And then about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to go over that and to do a tuning, just so you know. But reach out to us at EEARTS at Proton Mail or evolutionaryenergyarts at gmail.com. And we'd love to help you guys. As always, stay positive and prepared. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.